This is Creepy and Geeky, a part of the Morbidly Beautiful Podcast Network. Welcome to Creepy and Geeky. I'm your host, Robert, and on today's episode, it's part 1 in my Saw series. Joining me to talk about Saw 1 and 2 is Ariel Powers-Schaub. Ariel is a senior contributor to and admin assistant for Ghouls Magazine. She also has a book coming out in 2024 about the torture porn subgenre. Welcome back to the show, Ariel.
Hi, thanks for having me back. I cannot wait to talk about this franchise with you.
I see. I've seen you tweeting a few times. You're kind of all over everybody's podcasts this season.
I'm very lucky. I'm very lucky. I have been invited on a few podcasts in this Saw season, Sawtober. So I feel like I'm just popping up everywhere talking about these movies. It's really cool and fun.
Yeah, that's good. I don't know, hopefully you're not too talked out about them.
Oh my God, I don't think I could be.
That's good. That's good. Yeah. And I mean, you're literally writing a book about it. So, not just Saw, but torture porn in general.
And Saw does have its own chapter in the book. So
well, hopefully, since it's kind of
important.
The movie that kind of started it all.
Yes.
So,
it's the
and
backbone.
I found it interesting. Yeah, because I found it interesting that it wasn't the one considered the one that started it off. I think it was Hostel, and then then it got retroactively added into it all.
Yes,
so it makes sense. So why don't we just go ahead and jump right in?
Let's just get right into it.
Yeah. So these movies, I'm more familiar with probably these two than any of the others in the franchise. Only just because, and mostly the first one, because I've seen the first one, I'd say maybe 4 or 5 times.
Yeah.
And then the second one I've seen at least twice. No, 3 times now. Because I tried to do a rewatch of them all. Like I watched all of them up to 7 years ago after all the first 7 had come out. So I watched all the 7 and enjoyed them. And then a couple of years ago, I tried to do just a full Saw rewatch. And after the second one, I just petered out because I got distracted by other things.
Sure. Yeah. It is a commitment. It is.
Yeah. It's definitely a commitment. And so this time, most of these movies I'm only seeing for the second time. And like I said, Saw 1's been about 4 or 5 now. And then Saw 2, this is my third go through on these. So I'm not an aficionado by any means on any of these. So
that's okay. We can talk. It's fun to talk about them at whatever point, Exactly. And I think that's the case for a lot of people. A lot of people that I talk to just sort of anecdotally have seen 1 and 2 and then kind of stopped, or like saw 1 and 2 and then, maybe saw 3, but then quit after that. So there's a lot. I think it's pretty common to like have seen the first couple and then move on.
Right. Yeah. Because I think, well, of course, because, I talk about number 3 in the next episode, but that kind of ends a particular chapter in the series. So I can see where people kind of just go, okay, I'm done with it. I don't need any more than that. And to be fair, I mean, you have to be kind of hardy of stomach to be able to watch these movies. And so it's interesting to go through these, but I enjoy them because there is a lot of story that they've kind of gone through and added to these, and it's fun kind of watching them go, okay, we need to explain what happened in the previous installments. And so they kind of just keep adding more and more to the mythology, which is great though, because I think they actually do a really good job at it. They're actually one of the most consistent continuities that there is. Like I would say
absolutely
on par with like Scream or Chucky in terms of consistency. So
Yes. I think that's one of the things that makes the franchise really special. And even though it doesn't always have the same writers and directors throughout, it's got a lot of creative consistency. A lot of people will work on multiple movies. And
Right.
I think that helps, and having a lot of the same actors in a lot of the movies helps too. So
Yeah.
it really does feel like a cohesive story, even though that wasn't what it was meant to be in the beginning. It was meant to just be, one movie
One
and that's
movie and
it.
done. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's the ultimate thing that find that's interesting is that because the first movie did so well, they literally pumped out a new one every year for the next 6 more years.
Yep.
Until they finished the original story with number 7, and they just I think every year they were like, okay, this last one did well. Let's do another one. I
Yep.
think they did greenlight a couple of them together, like 3 and 4. They greenlit together. Because they were given Bousman his whole trilogy, and so it's interesting to want to see these. Now this rewatch I've only gotten up to number 6.
Okay.
So, and because it's been years, I have no clue what happens in 7. I've never seen Jigsaw.
Okay. I'm
And
excited for
then
you.
yeah, and then I have seen Spiral, but I only saw it once in the theaters, so I'm interested in going back to that one. I know Spiral is one of the ones that most of the hardcore fans don't seem to like as much.
Yeah, that seems to be the
Yeah,
case. I don't like it
yeah,
very much. I really wish I did. Like, I want to talk
right.
myself into liking it more. So maybe, who knows, after I do these podcasts this season, maybe I will end up liking Spiral. But yeah, it had some issues for me, but I never want to yuck anybody's yums. I'm glad it has
Yeah,
its fans. I'm excited for Saw 10, Saw X,
yes. Saw
and
X,
I'm hoping
saw
that one is more
1.2
for me.
or
Right,
1.5.
right. Yeah.
And and as much as people might complain, and I haven't heard anybody complain about it, but I think it's interesting that Saw X does fit between 1 and 2.
Hmm.
And it just makes a lot of sense when you look at this whole series, when it's all done and said, that it's just it fits in perfectly.
Yes.
So
Without saying any spoilers for the future, it does make sense to put a story there.
right,
Yep.
right.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly. So, but yeah, so Saul number 1, the big daddy of
Yes.
them all, the one
Oh,
that I think
yes.
most people are familiar with, the one that starts it all and sets the tone
Hmm.
for everything to come afterward. Is it's so I know that James Wan has a lot of fans.
Yes.
Um, and pretty much everything he does has been moderately successful in the horror world. The
Yeah.
Insidious movies, the Conjuring movies, all of that stuff, Malignant.
Hmm.
So all of that stuff has done really well. I myself am not a big fan. I think he does okay movies, but I've never been like super into his stuff. And but Saw, I will say, is probably the one thing that I've actually kind of really enjoyed of his. Um,
Yeah.
and so I think that's a interesting, at least in my opinion, that that
His
out of
first one.
everything that he's done is just been this first one. So
Yeah. I do think that's interesting. Yeah, I'm a big fan of his, but I get what you mean.
yeah.
And I think, like, there's a documentary about the making of Saw called Game Changer. It's really good.
Mm,
Came out in 2015. You can get it on like special edition Blu-rays sometimes and things. It
okay.
also might be on YouTube, but it's interesting to watch because they talk a lot about the making of, but they also are talking with James Wan and Lee Wanell about sort of kickstarting their careers as students and how hard they worked as students and how like they kind of lived the student dream of making it big. And Lee Wanell gets a little emotional in the documentary, and he's like, he kind of says we peaked early. Like, it was such a good experience
Yeah.
making Saw. He doesn't know how it could ever be that good again. And it's kind of bittersweet, I think. And who knows,
Yeah.
maybe they'll hit the big time again with something together, but they're both not hurting for careers either. So
Oh, not at all. Yeah.
yeah.
No, they're both doing very well right now.
Yes.
Yeah, and I think that everything that they have done has had lasting impact. Like I said, the Conjuring movies,
Hmm.
the the Insidious movies and the Saw franchise, all of those like went on to like they all spawned their own franchises, and so
Mm-hmm.
it's interesting to see that what their ideas are good. And I like,
Mm-hmm.
just because I'm not a big fan of James Wan doesn't mean that I don't think he's a good director, because I do think he's good.
Mm-hmm.
I just haven't really been into his movies as much. I think they're good. They're not terrible. So I just want to put that out there. The
Yeah,
only one,
I get
the
what you
only one that
mean.
I actively don't really care about, and again, it's more of a taste thing. I just don't care much about Malignant. That's the only one. I just don't understand why that one is so popular.
Yeah,
So
I that's a divisive one. Um, did you ever see Dead Silence?
I have not, but I own
Okay.
the 4K of it.
Oh,
So
that
I am
came
going
with
to
the
watch that
awesome
at some point.
poster.
Yes, because that's why I
Yeah,
bought it, was for the
yeah.
poster and the slipcover, because I love that artist, Devin Whitehead.
Yes. That I bought it too. I would love to know what you think of Dead Silence when you watch it, because to me
Yeah.
it feels it doesn't go as off the rails as Malignant, but it feels like maybe the seeds of Malignant were there in terms of
Okay.
James Wan being a little wacky. So
Okay.
I'd love to know what you think of it when you
Interesting.
do watch it.
Yeah, definitely. I'm definitely, it's again, it's on my never ending list of things to watch,
I know.
especially things in my collection I actually need to sit down and watch. But I
Oh my
watch
God,
so
I
much
know.
stuff just for the podcast, that I'm always like, oh my God, I'm never going to get to anything unless I put it on a list of things I need to watch. So
Right.
for the show.
Yes. This is
So
relatable.
but yeah, so give me kind of your
Mhm.
history with Saw 1 and 2. Like, how did you
Yeah.
come to it? Were you did you see it in the theaters? Did you were you a fan right away?
Yeah. So for the first film, I didn't get to see it in theaters, but I, like rented it and watched it at home. And I don't even like completely remember the entire experience. Like who else was there? Was I
Yeah.
in my house? Was I at someone else's house? Because I was so sucked into the movie that like everything else kind of dropped away, which is very dramatic to say, but listeners, you might know I get dramatic when we talk about Saw. Um, and it really did work for me. Like I was scared of it. I was afraid of the tense parts, like in Adam's apartment and in Diana's bedroom. I was afraid of those parts, and I was really intrigued by the police procedural. I had seen Seven,
Yeah.
so I was like really into that. And then I I don't want to put too much emphasis on the twist at the end because the rest of the movie is so good. But it
Yeah.
really is true. Like the twist at the end blew my mind. Like,
Yeah.
and I feel like I was just like, wow, that's something they can do. I didn't even know they could do that. And it made me just want to like rewatch the film immediately. So I was a fan right away, and I did go see the second one in theaters when it came out. Absolutely got me with all the twists in that one again. There's like three twists in that one. And I didn't guess it. I never try to guess the twist,
Yeah.
I don't want to. Um,
Yeah.
so I was completely blown away again. And I was like, oh my God, like what are these movies? Are they going to do this every time? So yeah, I was really hooked by Saw 1 and 2 immediately.
Yeah. I know I didn't see any of these in theater. And I saw the first one probably not too long after it had come out on DVD, but it was quite a while before I watched any of the others. And then I watched them all kind of back to back.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I like that this one. Yeah, I like how you mentioned Seven, because this one does have a very Seven kind of aesthetic to it.
Yes.
That kind of permeates this and kind of all of the rest of them. It's kind of like
Mm-hmm.
it exists in that same world. Um,
Exactly.
but it's like, like if John Kramer were the was friends with John Doe from
Right.
from Seven.
They went to
So
school
yeah,
together.
they
They
went to
did a
school
group
together.
project. Yeah.
Right. So yeah, it kind of exists in that same world. So I like that. I like that comparison. But yeah, no, I really enjoyed this one. Having Carrie Elwes as one of the main characters is always a plus.
Mm-hmm.
Um, bringing in Danny Glover as the cop was like, okay,
Yeah.
cool. This is cool. Um, it was neat. And then two, this was I think what this came out in 2004, right? So this was
Mm-hmm.
just before this is right around the time Lost came out.
Yeah.
And so it would be a couple of years, but there were a couple of actors in this that would then eventually go on to Lost.
Mm-hmm.
Michael Emerson, who played Zepp, and then the other detective, I can't remember his name.
Detective Singh, but I can't think of the
Detective Singh.
actor's name.
Yeah.
But he was also
And
in Lost.
he was also on Lost. He was in one of the later seasons.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so it was interesting to go back and rewatch this and go, oh yeah, okay. Because I was a huge Lost fan for when it was originally out. So
I was late to the Lost party. I watched it for the first time a few years ago, and I was like, "There's Sepp."
Yeah. Well, I'm sure that's how a lot of people came to it too. They were like, whenever he came on to Lost, like there were a lot of people who were already Saw fans. And then he comes on to Lost a couple of years later, and people are like, "Oh my god, it's Zepp." And I'm like, I don't know who that is. But yeah, no, this is a fun movie. Like I think it's interesting because it begins kind of all the hallmarks of what we know about the franchise,
Mm-hmm.
but the traps themselves are very minimal.
Yes,
it's very, and they were working on a very small budget, so it makes a lot of sense.
Mm-hmm.
But it's interesting to see that how much they do with this with so little, and that's what I enjoy a lot about this.
Yeah, the budget was so tight. They had to get really creative with sets, obviously, but they also had to get really creative with time. And they didn't have all their actors for a lot. They didn't have a long filming schedule anyway. I think it was something like 18 days. And then they didn't even have all of the actors for that time. So due to time and budget constraints, they didn't get as much footage as you want to when you're making a feature film. Like you want to have multiple takes so that you can edit together like the best versions of each one. And there were a lot of times where they could only do 1 or 2 takes. And the editor, Kevin Grutert, when he was trying to edit the film together, he was like, I literally don't have enough footage. How can I make a feature-length film out of what we have? And so he is basically a hero. He had to get really creative, and he inserted like a lot of stills. He did some shots in like black and white with no sound to make them look like security footage, even though it was just shots of other things in the movie. And that frenetic editing style that became so iconic of the franchise was a result of Kevin Grutert needing to just make some action. So it's so interesting how this movie was pieced together and then became this huge touchstone in the genre.
Right. Well, and I think that's interesting too, because it because he had to make do with all this, that it kind of set that formula, like you said, with not just the aesthetic part of it, but also how we have all these constant different viewpoints. You're looking at things from, especially in later installments, that then you're looking at things from a different perspective. And so they changed the way they do it because they've got the money to afford to redo it all. But so they take that, what he had to do in editing, and then redo it in reality later on down the road, and make this more convoluted, the way everything just kind of falls into, when you look at it, then later on you're kind of like, how much time did all this actually take? Like, was this like, because it seems like, you're talking years, but when you look at it all folded together, it's what, maybe a couple weeks, maybe a couple months that Jigsaw's Reign of Terror was going on.
Yes. So there are, throughout the franchise, there are a few markers that tell you how much time has passed. So in case any listeners haven't watched between 1 and 2, I won't spoil any of that. But there is a definitive answer. to
Okay.
how long Jigsaw's reign of terror lasted.
All right. Well, why don't you tell me?
Well, in case it's spoilerific for anybody else.
Okay, fine.
Okay. Yeah. I promise the timeline exists. And listeners, if you want to look it up, there's a really good Saw fandom wiki that lays out the timeline just perfectly. I actually referenced it quite a bit when I was writing my book because I was like, wait, did this happen here or there? Was this before or after this? Because it gets a little hard to, not hard to follow, but like if I
some
tried
of it's happening at the same time as something else.
If I tried to write down chronologically what happens in the whole story, I would have to double check my notes.
Yeah. And that's what's that is for me. I like that because I like the twisty nature. I like the time, like messing with that kind of stuff and going, oh, okay. So all this was going on. And it makes a lot of sense when we get to the later installments and there's more people involved. Yes. Because in this one, we just think there's only one person, well, two people involved. Well, we think it's only one, then we find out it's two, and then we find out just you know who the mastermind behind it all is.
So. And Zepp is really a victim himself, you know.
He is, yeah.
He's a little bit red herring Jigsaw throughout the film,
right?
And that works on the first viewing, but it's really John Kramer in the first one.
Oh yeah. And then we find out later on there might be some more people involved, but just a few. But you know, it's that this is a spoilerific podcast. We spoil things on here. So it's you know, but we find out later. I'm not gonna mention it right now because we'll get into it in the next the next movie that we talk about as well. So but I do like this one. You know, it's very tight, it's very contained. There's no real outside locations. They did everything inside because they had to do it all on like in a location, in a soundstage type location, again because of lack of money. And I think that's interesting too because I not positive you'd be able to tell me this, but I don't think they ever really explain what city they're in.
Correct. Yeah.
Yes.
I like
we
to
never
just
know.
call
It's just some industrial city.
Exactly. Which is also really similar to Seven. They never say in Seven which city they're in. But for the Saw world, I like to call it Saw City. I think that's kind of fun. But no, they never do say.
Yeah. No. I'm not surprised. I mean, it makes sense. It keeps it ambiguous. It could be any city of any size that's got you know lots of abandoned industrial buildings. So
and then you don't have to worry about being loyal to geography. You know, if you say it's, you know, some city, then you'll have people from that city going, well, that's not over there. This is over here. How does that work? So we don't have to be distracted by that.
Exactly.
It's like Gotham.
Yeah. Gotham is supposed to be like, you know, a mix of like
fake New York, right?
New York and Chicago. Well, it's supposed to be like a mix between New York and Chicago.
Oh, so, okay.
Yeah. Because Metropolis is supposed to be like similar to New York as well. So I think that's, you know, and I think Gotham is supposed to be closer to Chicago in that way.
Oh, okay. I
could be wrong. I'm not a huge DC person. Yeah.
I don't know. You are the definitive voice on comic books on this podcast. So, but yeah, it's similar to that.
Yeah, exactly. So it's just Saw City. You know, it's just it's John Kramer's city. That's all we know.
Exactly.
He's the one ruling it.
Yes.
But yeah, no, I enjoy this one. We've got Carrie Ellis. We've got Tobin Bell, of course, Danny Glover, as I mentioned, Michael Emerson is up. We've got and Lee Winnell playing the other character, and his name's escaping me at the moment. Adam, there you go. And I think, you know, Lee Winnell's a good actor. I've seen him pop up in a couple of other things. Like he was in Cooties. I think he wrote that one as well.
I've not seen that, but it is on my list.
That one's funny. Yeah. It's good. Yeah. It's but yeah, so it's an interesting cast, and I like how, you know, you've got these two, and it sets that kind of formula up where you got these two people who don't know each other, you don't know what's going on, And you've got these moments where they have to kind of work against each other.
Mm-hmm.
And I like that because it's kind of sets the tone for, again, this movie really sets the tone for everything to come afterward. And I like the consistency of tone they have for everything, no matter
Mm-hmm.
how convoluted it gets, that they keep that tone and the consistency down through every installment
They really
that
do.
I've seen so far anyway.
Yeah. I think that they really do, especially in the original like run of movies where um you can count on several things when you come to a Saw movie. So,
Right.
and I think the second movie solidifies that a lot more, but the first one definitely sets the stage.
Right. Yeah, I think that's what's great about this 1-2 punch right here is that you get the beginnings, the kind of the idea of it all, and then number two solidifies it and
Mm-hmm.
makes it and kind of makes it really concrete exactly what they're doing and how they're moving forward from there.
Yes.
So is there anything that you don't like about this movie?
That's such a good question. Um, I mean, no, and that's an emotional response,
Right.
That's not necessarily a critical response. If I wanted to approach this as a critic, there are things that you can comment on. I think Carrie Elwes and Lee Wanell act like they're in a different movie sometimes. And
Right.
I think Danny Glover's too old for this shit sometimes. But like all the sum of its parts come together to make something that is so special to me that there's nothing that I point to and say, oh, I wish this was different.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like I think for me, the balance between police procedural and people in the trials and traps works really well. Like there's enough room to breathe between the violence. Um, I
Yeah.
don't, I mean, I certainly prefer the time we spend with Adam and Dr. Gordon than I do the time we spend with the police, just because I think Adam and Dr. Gordon are more interesting characters. But I
Right.
don't dislike the time we spend with the cops.
Yeah, no, I think I'd agree with that. I think that you know, Danny Glover definitely is kind of, I don't know, he's just kind of grumbling his way through it. Um and
Yes.
not necessarily in a bad way, but it definitely doesn't seem like he's super engaged in the movie. Um
Mm-hmm.
and I think that's also because it's a small part, and like we said,
Mm-hmm.
like you said, it was a small part, but it's also not that many days. And
Yes.
and they were all kind of working, and this may be why it feels like Carrie Ellis and Lee Wanell were in two different movies. They probably weren't on set together all the time either.
That's right.
So
That's true.
they had to act against whatever. I mean, I'm sure Lee
Mm-hmm.
Wanell was there all the time, but maybe
Yes.
Carrie Ellis wasn't there all the time.
Yeah, they
So
had Carrie Elwes for about 6 days.
yeah.
So some of Adam's lines where it's like Dr. Gordon will say something and then Adam will respond, and you're like, whoa, that was really tonally jarring. Like
Yeah.
it's because they were literally happening separately.
Yeah. Yeah, which makes sense. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
if you've got only that much time, then you've got to make do of it, which you can.
Yeah.
I did that. There's a part in it that kind of makes me laugh. He's he gets on the phone and he thinks it's Zepp, and he's like
Yes.
yelling at him. And he's like, "Oh my god!" And then he then it's his wife. He's like, "Allie." The way he says
Yes.
it just cracks me up so bad because it's just so like weird. It just
Yes.
it's just a I don't know. It just doesn't sound
There
like the way you would make it sound normally. So
No, there are so many line deliveries in this movie that are outside of reality. Like that scene you just referenced where he goes, I'm gonna kill you, you bastard. And then he goes,
yeah,
Allie. It's like two different actors. And then later Zepp has one where he's Allie and Diana have escaped and Zepp is chasing them down. He's calling out and he's loading his gun and he says, I'm going to kill your husband now, Mrs. Gordon. But when he says Gordon, his voice drops several registers and he does like a growl. And I don't know what that choice was about. It doesn't seem like a way humans speak, but I just like the whole thing is so heightened and unreal that I just sort of accept that as
Yeah, you
I'm
just
going
kind of
with
go
it, you
with it.
know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think that's what's funny is there's like those little moments here and there that you just kind of take you out for a second, but then you get pulled right back into it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I'm never like that, like I said, that part where it's Allie cracks me up,
Yeah.
but like I get back into it. It's just like for a second I'm like, whoa, what? Like,
Mm-hmm.
all right. And Carrie Ellis, he's so good at comedy that like it's almost a comedic line. And almost like he's
Yes.
doing it on purpose. And I don't think he is, but it just takes you out for just that second. And I'm just like, okay, gotta get back into
Yeah.
this.
Yeah. It's kind of
So
surreal.
yeah, but yeah, no, I think beyond that, like you said, the little things that kind of here and there you might niggle about, but for the most part the movie is so good and so sound that
Mm-hmm.
you really can't complain about much of it. So yeah,
Yes.
I enjoy the most. I enjoy most of it for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any particular favorite scenes or kills or anything?
Yes. So,
Okay, tell me.
probably very basic to say, but I love Amanda's everything involving Amanda. Um, the reverse bear trap sequence
Yeah,
is iconic, and it's the only trap we see from pretty much beginning to end. And that makes sense because she survives it. So like we spend the
yeah,
most time with her. Um, this trap, like this sequence with Amanda tells us several things about Jigsaw in a movie where we don't really get to know him that well. You know, it tells
right,
us about why and how he picks his victims. It tells us that he's willing to lie. You know, he tells Amanda there's a key in the stomach of your dead cellmate. He's not dead. She has to kill him. And if that's not a mistake. Like if Jigsaw wanted that person to be dead, he would be. He was, you know, the
right.
test of Amanda was how badly do you want to stay alive? Are you willing to kill someone? Um, so it's a really efficient scene in that it shows us his engineering capability, it and just sort of like his mindset going into everything. Plus, I just love Amanda as a character, and the reverse bear trap is my favorite trap. Um, and I have to give a shout out to Shawnee Smith. She had a 102-degree fever and the flu
Oh yeah.
when she did her scenes, and she did an excellent job.
Oh yeah. No, I would think that's the highlight of the whole movie
Yeah.
is Amanda with the reverse bear trap. I mean, it's very iconic. I mean, they even
Mm-hmm.
um put it in their recent Blu-ray set. I know you got it.
Yes.
Um but yeah, I agree. I think it's just such an iconic scene and part of what little it tells you about Jigsaw slash John
Mm-hmm.
Kramer before the later movies. And it tells you a little bit about Amanda as well. Not a
It
whole lot,
does.
but you
Yeah.
know, but a little bit, and leads into the next movie. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but
There's
yeah,
um
yeah. Go ahead.
there's another part in the first movie that I really like. Well, there's two. Okay, I promise I'll limit it to two. Um the sequence in Adam's apartment, I think, is really well done.
Yeah,
Where, you know, it's a really grungy apartment. The setting is not nice. He calls it his shithole apartment, and you're like, ah, I
yeah,
see that. He's developing photos, so it's dark and there's red light. And then you have the sequence with the camera flashing, which is done really well to add some scary sounds and sights to this really simple scene. Um, and then you've got Billy the puppet scaring the crap out of everybody. So like I think that is the scariest scene in the movie, and it works really well.
yeah.
The other scene I like a lot is with um Dr. Gordon's family at home. And I think that's another really efficient bit of storytelling where his daughter Diana comes out and says, I think it's really important to note, she says, there's a man in my room.
Right,
And, you know, it's not like she said, there's a monster under my bed or in my closet. She said, there's a
right.
man in my room. But her parents are so wrapped up in their own argument that they don't really listen to that. Like Dr. Gordon goes to tuck her in and like soothe her and get her back to bed, but I'm not a parent, so I don't know. But I feel like the words "there's a man in my room" might trigger me to open the closet and look.
Right.
But he does not do that because he's really focused on going to do other things. So I think that's a really efficient bit of storytelling.
Yeah. No, and that's definitely one of the scarier bits too, because if you catch that, that's just like, ooh, that's creepy, because she did say, like, kids don't usually go, oh, there's a man in my room. They'll say there's a monster. So yeah, it's
right,
a
or
little
there's
bit
something, like they'll be more vague about what it could be.
Yeah, exactly. No, it's definitely a scary scene, and then the mom comes in after she screams, and then she sees the guy take her, and
that's
so
terrifying.
It's just, yeah. So yeah, that's definitely a great scene. I agree about the Adam one as well. His apartment, that whole sequence is nice because of the camera flashing. So they do a lot of good work in this with the limited budget that they have. So, and that's what's
yes, they do
nice about it. That and even the later installments, yes, they get higher budgets, but it doesn't super feel like it. They get to do more elaborate traps out of it, but they're keeping to the overall aesthetic and low like not low production values, but just the not needing for like a lot of fancy stuff,
right, like keeping it really
traps.
straightforward,
Right,
of like, here are the things we need to make this story, and then they put the budget in places where it matters more.
yes, exactly.
All
right. Trying to think, dude, is there anything else you want to say specifically about this movie before we move on to number 2?
Oh my gosh.
I mean, there's a ton we can say about it.
I know. There's so much we could say. I don't think so. I think we highlighted the really important factors and its important place in history. I think from 2 on, it starts to be more about the plot of what happens in the movie itself, whereas the first one is almost like a prologue setup.
Yeah, that it does feel like that. It feels like number 1's a prologue to everything else that comes along. Because after this point, everything starts to get convoluted and and twisty in ways that that you're not fully prepared for, and that they weren't fully prepared for, since this series wasn't envisioned as an actual series. So I do think it's interesting that they held that consistency as long as they did. That's really cool. But number 2, introduces us to a few things. One, it's Darren Lynn Bousman as the director for the next 3 movies, 2, 3, and 4. And eventually he comes back to do Spiral as well. And it also introduces us to some recurring characters. We get Detective Eric Matthews and Detective Carey.
Yep.
And Amanda's back.
Amanda's back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and this one introduces a concept that I actually like more than others. This one, and I think number 5, have the concept of a group in a setting, and they have to try to work together, but inevitably work against each other and fail.
It's like a nightmare team building exercise, like a corporate retreat. Yeah.
With people you have no clue who they are.
Yes.
And you're all fighting to survive.
And you're dying. You're actively dying. Yeah.
And instead of helping each other, you're just trying to throw each other, under the bus and not be the one to die. It's that whole adage of, I don't have to be faster than the bear. I just have to be faster than you. And that's how they're all acting. Is like, I just have to be faster than all of you so that I can be the last person out of here.
Yes.
You all can die before me. So, but but inevitably you all die anyway.
Right.
So,
right. Yes.
So So go ahead.
Well, this is the movie where we really meet Jigsaw, like we spend a lot of time with him, hearing from him, hearing what he's about, why he does what he does. And so we get a ton of insight into someone we really just got a glimpse at in the first movie. And it's revealed, at the very end that he and Amanda were working together. And so it sort of opens up this whole other world of, we just learned about this person and it's not only him. So like, yeah, this expands the world exponentially.
Right. Yeah. And it's an idea that continues to grow movie after movie. Like every movie after this, we get like, every movie has a twist. Every one of these Saw movies has a twist to them at the end, and you're just like, oh my god, what, and there's like somebody else is involved or something else was going on.
Yes.
And there's plot lines that are running concurrently to an earlier movie. And so that's what's great about this one. And this one also kind of introduces that in a way, because Eric Matthews and people, they find Jigsaw, they confront him, and he's got a bunch of people in the house and they're all on these monitors, and they're all dying one by one on these monitors, and they think it's all in real time, but you come to find out at the end, this was a long time ago. This was hours ago. Everything they're watching was already recorded and and has already happened. And so I love that aspect of it, because while he's messing with them, and again, it also introduces this concept of, don't do, like, this is something he tells the cops all the time, don't do what you think you have to do. Do what I say and everything will be all right. And
yeah,
and every time the cops fail. So it's it cracks me up every time, because I'm just like, if you just sat down and did what he said, you would have gotten through this and everything would be okay.
Your son is in a safe place. Wink, wink.
Right.
This is a movie that teaches us to listen really hard to what Jigsaw is saying.
Right.
And we know he has the capacity to lie. We learned that in the first one. But if he does lie, it's to a particular end. Like, he's really focused on whatever his goal is. And in the second movie, his goal is to torture Eric Matthews. So the deceit that he uses of the people in the house being, a taped recording, that's a lie he's essentially telling Eric Matthews. But it's all in service of this idea of, if you sit here and talk with me and don't try to kill me and beat the crap out of me like is in your nature, everything will be okay. Yeah.
But he knows, and this is where it comes down to, and it's mentioned later, he understands people on a level that they don't even understand themselves. So he knows that whenever he tells this person something like this, that they're going to fail. He already knows they're going to fail, but he's trying to get them not to. He's trying to see if they'll actually take the real, the upper, whatever I'm trying to say, the
like the high road,
the better choice. Yeah, the high road, the better choice. And so whether they'll take that or not, and if they do, then things will work out better. Sure, some other people are going to die, but but you'll be okay, and people around you will be okay. And so he tries to do that, and every time they fail, because they and I don't blame them in a way. Why would you believe somebody like that? Why would you play into that? So, but he's always doing it to people who are like not great. They all have their flaws, and they all have done things that deserve some kind of justice.
I think Jigsaw, I think he's good at picking victims. And what I mean is, like, I can't remember what movie it is, but at some point Jigsaw says, like, he really understands human nature, and like, he knows what humans are going to do. And like, that might be true, but I also think, like, not to get too serious, but like, people who, like, abusers will seek out people who they think will be accepting of their abuse, right? And then you get trapped in this cycle of control, and it's hard to leave. I think Jigsaw is operating on a similar wavelength, where he knows who he can make a victim and what that person will do. And so like I always like to imagine, like, what if he got the wrong person and he totally mispredicted their behavior and they just went against everything he thought they would do? Like, where's the blooper reel for Jigsaw picking victims, you know?
And I think that would actually be a fun twist on it. Like if they did a movie like that where somebody actually did the right thing and did the things like against exactly what he said, like would it actually, I mean, in kind of in a way, well, no, I mean, I was gonna say kind of in a way, Amanda did that, but no, I mean, she still, killed somebody to save herself. So, but it's, I think that it would be interesting. But again, I think that's about, doing the thing that you need to do to survive. Or would you be willing to do those things? Would you be willing to let somebody else die? Because that's always what he's doing, is letting other people die.
Yeah.
So that you can stay alive, or so that you can pass his test. He's going to let all these other people die, but you've got to stand back and let it happen. And that was the whole thing with Detective Riggs later on. I'll talk about that in another episode. But it's just very similar to that, and it's with these characters in this one specifically. They're all in this house. If they had all sat down, stopped fighting each other, if they had all discovered the numbers on their back of their necks early, they could have figured it out and gotten out early. They wouldn't have been having to go through the house and all getting killed off one by one. But because they all were freaking out, and I get it, don't get me wrong, you're gonna freak out, but to have all the antagonism that they did and everything else just made it worse.
Yeah. So. And I think that's by design. I think Jigsaw picked people who are gonna be at each other's throats.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that he knew, and again, that's where he's, like you said, yes, he's choosing people. He specifically knows how these people are going to act, but he's choosing these people because he knows how they're going to act. It's not like just choosing somebody random off the street. He knows how these people are going to react because he studied them. He knows what they're like, so he knows the kind of choices they're going to make already. So I mean, it makes sense in that way that it's not really going to happen the way, like, it's always going to happen the way he wants it to, for the most part. So,
and I think that's where it comes back to his goal. Like, so in the second movie, his goal is to torture Eric Matthews. So if things go a little bit wrong in the house, it's not the biggest deal. He still gets the tape and, seeing Daniel Matthews on the screen. But, if things kind of go haywire in the house, Jigsaw can work with that. Like, the thing he really needs is Eric Matthews to come sit down and, eventually say, take me to the house, and then get locked in the bathroom.
Right. Yeah, it's funny too, because he knows that he can just, if he just sat there, and if Eric Matthews would just sit there and take the shit that Jigsaw is saying to him, then and just not engage with it, then everything would be fine. But he knows that that's not going to happen. He knows that Eric Matthews is a particular kind of person, because he's chosen these people in this house specifically because of that. These people who've been railroaded by Matthews. And so he knows that this is what he's going to do, and that he just has to push him just a little bit to get him to react the way he wants to react, and to make it, so that he captures him, so it's like there's so much of this that goes into it. And again, this plays into these later installments as well. This movie really kind of solidifies the whole Jigsaw ethos, his whole plan and everything that goes on with that.
And it gives us the formula for the future movies too, of like, we're going to see several traps in a row, of characters that you care about to varying amounts. And we're going to get some Jigsaw lore weaved in, and then we're going to get a twist. And, it sounds straightforward, but I think they do something great with it in each move. Well, some better than others.
Yeah, yeah.
I love all of them, but
Yeah, I agree. I think that, and in this one, like I said, this one's kind of one of my favorites so far. Just because I like the aspect of having a bunch of people in the same location and them all having to try to work together to
Mm-hmm.
get out, and then ultimately failing. And they do this again in number 5, where you get a group of people together and they are dumb and at each other's throats and fail to get to the end as well. So
I think the thing we lose in that is like spending time with the characters to get to know
right,
them.
yeah,
So like in the first movie, and I won't spoil anything, but in the third movie, those are more intimate stories, where
right,
you're
yeah,
spending them with fewer characters. So it kind of depends on what you're looking for. If you're in the
yeah,
mood for a Saw movie where you want to see people cycle through the traps, Saw 2 is great for that.
right,
And sometimes
yeah.
that's what I want.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's why they do that too, is
Mm-hmm.
each installment is a different flavor, and that keeps
Yes.
it interesting for the filmmakers, and it also keeps it interesting for the audience,
Mm-hmm.
especially if you are going to be binge watching these. That way each one isn't just like, oh, this is the same stuff over again. Maybe a
Right.
little twist on things, but it's the same thing over again. So far the only one that I haven't really enjoyed is probably number 4. um
I love
and
number
i
4,
i
but that
still
one is
like
divisive.
I still like number 4. I don't think any of these so far have been bad at all. That's the one that I've just liked least. And that, I think
Mm-hmm.
that's the one with Riggs. um and it just, that one just, I don't know, I'm just not involved. Like, I'm not pulled in by Riggs himself and his whole journey through it all. And I think some of the traps are a little less spectacular than in the other movies. But that's, I mean, again, that's just more of like a nitpick, you know.
And I think
But
it shows that throughout the franchise, there's I don't want to say something for everybody because that's not true, but there's
right,
something for a lot of us.
yeah, if
There's
you like these
exactly.
movies, then there's going to be some that you're going to like more than others,
Yep.
and it always just kind of
Yes.
depends on your own personal preferences and your own, like I said, I like 2 and 5 because of the groove aspect, and and that's
Mm-hmm.
kind of like, and again, I kind of feel like that's the reason why I like the escape room movies,
Oh, I
because
love
they,
those movies.
yeah, I love those. And I feel like escape room is kind of like a variation on the Saw formula. They took
Yes.
what 2 and 5 did and then just kind of like extrapolated them into the escape room formula.
Yeah,
And
it's
so
soft for
yeah,
preteens.
yeah. Well,
Yeah,
it's pretty gruesome too at times. So I
it
mean,
is.
I think it's more PG-13, but it's still fun.
Yes. Well,
Um,
I think about I was watching the Saw movies as a teenager, so
yeah,
maybe it's like you and Belle were talking about in the Fear Street episode.
yeah,
Sometimes things that are marketed towards teenagers are already beyond it.
yeah, exactly.
But I
Yeah.
love the escape room movies too.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, definitely. I think, honestly, I would say I probably like the escape room movies more than the Saw movies, but only um, because they're lighter. You know what I mean?
They
Like
definitely are.
these are more, and I like the Saw movies because of this, but they're more intricate, and
Mm-hmm.
you kind of, once you start watching them, you have to watch them all because you don't get the whole story unless you do.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that so far, at least with the escape room movies, I can just put on both of those and I can get enough of the main story to understand it all. And there's not a lot that I have to go into.
Yeah,
But I
definitely
think that,
true. And it's a less bleak, like it's a gruesome, hard story, but it's not as
right.
bleak of a world. Saw City is just bleak.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, Saw City's definitely not like, if I had known all that stuff was going on, I might want to just move.
Yeah,
Um,
maybe move.
you know,
Yeah,
because you
maybe.
never know, because he just seems to pull anybody.
I
But
know, we're all in
but he,
danger.
yeah. And that's what's crazy is that the people in this one, all the ones who are dying in the house, they didn't really, I mean, yes, they're not necessarily the greatest people. They all went to jail and everything like that. But at the same time, they went to jail because Matthews kind of railroaded them. And so
Yeah.
they're all there because of the sins of Matthews. And so it's actually frustrating because it'd be like, okay, well, I'm here for somebody else's problem. Why aren't you killing him?
Yeah. And this is like, it's no secret that I'm not a Jigsaw defender. Like, I love
Oh
these.
yeah.
I love Jigsaw as a villain, but I think he's full of shit. And
Oh,
so,
absolutely.
yeah, he'll be like, my morality, my teachings, my lessons. And it's like, dude,
Yeah.
you just take whatever selfish path you're on and try to shape it into your morality.
Yeah.
Like, he wanted to torture Eric Matthews. He figured out a way to do it. And then he goes, I'm not killing people technically. And it's like,
Yeah.
okay, if we read a news story about this happening, we would say the person who put everybody in the death house was a murderer. So come on,
Yeah.
Jigsaw.
Yeah. If the choice is cutting off my arm or dying, you're still giving them like a bad choice. You're
Yeah.
still, and you're putting them in a trap that if they don't make a choice fast enough, then yes, you did kill them.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm going to go ahead and say you're responsible for their death.
Right. Yeah. And I think any court, any jury in the world would agree. Like you may have your semantics and everything like that, but in the real world that doesn't work.
Right.
And his motivations, well, don't get me wrong, I agree, some of them are justified in terms of being angry. Don't get me wrong, you can be angry. You can't go around killing people because you're angry.
Right.
So
come on, Jigsaw.
I'm definitely not a Jigsaw defender, but I still enjoy the movies. So
absolutely.
But that's like any slasher. I mean, come on, you can't tell me that most of us don't root for the villain in these movies.
Right.
You want to see Jason hack everybody up. You want to see Michael hack everybody up.
Yes.
So that's what you're here for at the Saw franchise for, is to watch people in these death traps. So you don't care about anything else. It's okay. We all agree that's what makes it fun.
Yes. Well, there's a lot of writing, like a lot of analysis about the Saw franchise that tends to focus on John Kramer's sense of justice and morality. And sometimes it makes me want to scream because I'm like, you don't really buy this, do you? But, if we're talking about it in the universe of the movie versus are we talking about it as real people? Right. I don't want to see people get hacked up with a machete unless it is Friday the 13th movie, then I do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, absolutely. Like I can't deal with real violence, like real world violence. No, I absolutely hate it. Don't want to see it. Like when the Faces of Death movies were going around and everybody's like, oh, this is real stuff. I didn't watch that stuff. Even though it ended up being fake, I was still like, no, I'm not going to watch it because it's too real. I have no desire to see real humans dying. That's just that's disgusting to me. Now, fake people, like people fake dying, sure, bring it on
all day,
like,
all day long.
Fiction
all day.
Evil Dead is my favorite franchise. People get tore up in that stuff, so it's really gruesome in those. But it was funny too because I've seen it pop up and I saw you respond to it today. There was a tweet where somebody made who's like, oh, anybody who likes these movies is disgusting and needs help, and I'm just like, shut up, like stop trying to moralize what people watch and what people enjoy. Just because people watch this doesn't mean they're sick or disturbed or anything else like that. We watch horror movies and stuff like this to feel better about our lives. It's kind of like what Jigsaw's whole thing is. He puts people in these traps to appreciate their lives. It's kind of what we watch horror movies for. We watch death and destruction and everything like that to feel like not better about our lives, but to like appreciate our lives in a way. That's a portion of it anyway.
Yeah, I think so. And I think it's just like, it's good to examine why you like what you like and what you're getting out of it, because I think like if you do want to watch actual, if Faces, I think Traces of Death maybe is the one that's real. I'm not sure. I get them mixed up.
Yeah.
But like, if you do want to watch actual real violence and you're like, this is fun, I like watching this, like you should maybe investigate that and decide how you feel about it. It's hard to stand outside someone and say, you're sick and you have mental problems and you need help for liking such and such a thing. It's like, and it's Twitter rage bait. So I get it. I just thought it was I wanted to screenshot it because I love when people call me a sick fuck and stuff like that. So
I think it's funny. I just, every time there's so much like yeah, the rage bait on Twitter.
Mm-hmm.
It's so stupid, and everybody, and too many people engage with it. Like it's
Yes.
like you'll never see me engage with that stuff.
No.
I've engaged a couple of times with some weird discourse, and I try not to, just because it doesn't get me anywhere, and
No,
nobody
nothing good
cares.
comes of it. Yeah.
Yeah, and then it just so I just when I see that stuff, I just chuckle and scroll on,
Mm-hmm.
because it's just like I know people are doing. It's like the nudity and sex debate that gets pulled up every 2 weeks on there and everything.
Yeah.
It's like, shut up. Like, just if you don't want to watch that stuff, fine, but stop trying to police everybody else's stuff.
Yes.
So, but yeah, and this is the same thing. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you're writing a book about this, and so I think obviously, you're coming at it from a love of this subgenre,
Yes.
that you are coming at it from a your own perspective. I'm assuming your book is your perspective on it,
Yeah.
more than necessarily an outside analytical look at it.
Mm-hmm.
um and so I think that's cool. I like when people come at it from their own perspectives and can kind of talk about it in a way that shows why you enjoy that.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yes. Yeah, that's what I like to read. So that I was like, I'll write what I like to read.
yeah,
I know,
well, I'm interested in it. I can't wait to see it when it comes out.
Me too.
How's it coming along?
It's coming along good. The
Good.
draft is written, so it's
Oh, all
going through
right.
the process of being edited and that kind of stuff. So,
Awesome.
yep, it's crazy.
That's cool. Um, is there anything that you don't like about Saw 2 that we haven't
It
already
is one
mentioned?
of my least favorite
Oh,
of the
interesting.
franchise.
Okay.
Yeah, it's lower for me. Um, and I
Why
know
is that?
like a lot of people, it's one of their favorite. I think for me, the time spent in the house is mostly not interesting to me. Like the
Okay.
needle pit is great,
Yeah.
but I find a lot of the characters really grating and I just want to get back
Oh,
to
yeah.
like Jigsaw. And then once the Amanda reveal happens, I'm excited about that. But before the Amanda reveal happens, she doesn't do much because she's kind of guiding the action quietly.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
she's not being too out there because she doesn't want to appear like she knows too much.
Yeah.
Um, so I think I like a lot of where it ends up, but it's not one I choose to sit down and watch a ton because I'm like, the house. I don't want to suffer through the people in the house.
Right.
Yeah.
No, I agree with you. The people in the house are kind of like obnoxious, to
Mm-hmm.
say the least.
Yeah.
But I think I give it higher marks, um, overall, because of just how much it lays out the mythology. Like we said, where number
Yes.
one is kind of the prelude, number two kind of solidifies and really sets down everything that is to come afterward. And it opens up the world in a way that number one didn't, because number one was so contained,
Mm-hmm.
that it number two then breaks it out into this bigger world. And especially for the
Yes.
next few installments that follow along with Matthews and the others that come.
Mm-hmm.
So I like that aspect of it, but like I agree, between the obnoxious people, and I don't really care for Matthews either. I think Matthews is not the greatest character. Um,
No.
he's kind of thin. But I do appreciate all the Jigsaw and Amanda stuff. So all of
Yes.
that aspect of it, um, makes it worth getting through all the other stuff for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And I
So
like um Detective Carrie, spending time with
yes,
her. She's very interesting and nobody's listening to her. So I
yeah,
like
and I wish
her
we'd actually gotten
perspective.
more of her in the series.
Mm-hmm.
She's comes and goes way too fast in the series, and I would have preferred her to be more in it. Um,
Yeah.
but you know, that's neither here nor there.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah. So what was your favorite kill or favorite scene in this one?
Um, well, my favorite, so it's not a kill, but like my
Right.
favorite trap is Amanda going into the needle pit.
The needle
Again,
pit. Yeah.
another
Yeah.
basic pick, but I love Amanda. I love her as a character. Um, that scene is brutal to watch. Like, it's a really good trap. And I think it shows the character of Amanda, it shows her commitment to the mission, because as she's, setting everything up with Jigsaw, she doesn't know she's going into the needle pit. That's not like a part of the plan. It's something that goes off plan, and she makes it work. So I think it tells us a lot about Amanda. So I love that part. And then I think my favorite part of the movie is the reveal that Amanda's working with Jigsaw. Like, I wanted to stand up and cheer for her when I saw that. I just thought that was awesome.
Well, I saw the poll that Devon Taylor had put out about which was the best Jigsaw protege, and kind of his reasoning behind them all, and like kind of comparing them to different Batman proteges, which I thought was actually a funny comparison. And I saw I take it you're a huge Amanda fan.
Yes, she's obviously the best one. She's the only actual devoted one.
So, that's funny.
Yeah, Devon and I we can go toe to toe on that.
I haven't made up my mind on it yet.
That's fair. I mean, I haven't finished watching them.
But I like Amanda, but I also think she has issues. Hoffman, I think Hoffman's good, but also at the same time, he's got issues. He's got his own issues going on. So, but yeah, there's one I'm kind of edging towards, but like I don't know if it was one of the ones that was mentioned. It was Amanda, Hoffman, Gordon, and who was the fourth one?
Logan, who I think you haven't met yet.
Okay, that must be in Jigsaw.
Yes.
So okay, yeah. So I don't know any of those, but mine is somebody who isn't any of those four.
Jill.
Jill.
Yeah. So Jill is also a good answer. She's the definition of stand by your man.
Yeah, and she's and you don't find out about her until much later. Spoilers for everybody, but you don't find out about her until much later.
This whole episode has spoiled the whole franchise.
Oh yeah, exactly.
Put a little.
If you have not watched all of these,
I tried not to. I tried to keep it contained, but here we are. It is hard to talk about.
It really
pieces of the franchise,
because they all kind of collapse in on each other eventually. With each successive installment, they inform you they make you go back and examine the previous installments and go, oh, okay, right. This could have existed in that moment. So it's interesting, but yeah, so Jill's probably my pick at this moment, but that's having gotten up to number 6 so far. Yeah.
I can't wait to hear what you think of 7 and Jigsaw.
I'll be talking to so I've got you on for this episode. The next episode is with Christy Adams from Nightmare Toys.
Nice.
And then episode 3 is with Kat Valor. That's on Saw 5 and 6. And then Saw 7 and Jigsaw is with Kat Hughes.
Perfect.
And then for Spiral and Saw X, it will be my daughter Katrina.
Awesome.
Yeah. So I think it's interesting to
Katrina's take on the new films. I always like that. Yeah.
Yeah. And so it's really fun with this too, because she wasn't into horror for most of her life. And then in her later high school years, she kind of started watching stuff, and she actually started with watching the Saw franchise. And so I was just like, and I found out later after she'd watched them, I was like, really, that's what you started with? So excellent. I was like, that's a bizarre thing to start with. It was like, I could have eased you into some other stuff.
Nope. Going straight into it.
Straight to she went straight into it, and she enjoyed it.
That's awesome.
So, yeah. So it'll be fun to talk to her about. I think it's interesting though too that I have all women guests for this series. Saw seems to be a fairly woman centric, a woman that has a large women fan base.
It's for the girlies.
Yeah. So I think it's interesting that's that's how it kind of fell into it. Like all the people who volunteered for episodes for all.
I love
Okay,
that.
that's very cool. Yeah.
When I went to see Spiral in the theater, it was still definitely, COVID times. And in my theater, there were 3 or 4 other women. And like, that was it. The theater was otherwise empty. It was me and 3 or 4 other women who are all my age or older. And I was like, we all need to just be best friends. Like, we all live in this town and we're all here seeing a matinee of Spiral. Like, it was just, I was like, this is not the crowd I expected. And I love it.
That's funny. Yeah, no, that was Spiral. It was actually, my daughter works at a theater now. And it has been working at a theater since just before Spiral came out. And Spiral is actually I think the first movie she and I watched together after she started working there.
Nice.
So yeah. So it's pretty funny. But yeah, so it's gonna be good to get her on for the last episode for that. So
yeah.
And it'll also be my 2nd anniversary show. So
oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. So
I'm excited to listen to this whole series and all the guests you just named. Yeah. I think it's going to be great.
Yeah, it should be a lot of fun. It's all people that I've had on the show multiple times, and everybody's awesome. So it's gonna be a fun series for everybody, I think.
Yay, Saw season.
Yeah, Saw season. And it's all coming out in October, so it's gonna be Sawtober.
It's perfect.
I had originally had it planned so that we would watch the next movie, the Saw X, at the end of October, and then Katrina and I would record, and then it would come out like the literally the Monday after it came out. But they moved it up. They moved
the date up. So. That messed up everybody's podcasting schedules. Can I tell you, like, all of the podcasts that are doing Saw retrospectives were counting on that late October release date.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I'm still releasing it on the same day that I was originally going to do it. It's just going to be a month later. So
yes,
instead of the weekend later. So which works for me. It gives me a little bit of time.
Yeah. And like people can actually go see it before they listen to the episode.
Yeah, exactly. And since mine tend to be very spoiler filled, it'll make it a lot easier for that. So
yes.
So all right. Is there any other things that we want to touch on that we haven't yet with this one, with Saw 2?
I don't think so. Just that Jigsaw is a really intimidating villain, even when he's eating soup.
Yeah. He's breathing with the an oxygen mask and everything.
Yes.
So yeah.
He still cuts an intimidating figure.
Yeah. No, Tobin Bell definitely makes for a good villain, for sure.
Yes. Yes.
I agree. All right. Well, why don't you let people know where they can find you online?
Absolutely. You can find me in your closet with a pig mask on, waiting to kidnap you. You can also find me on all the socials at Ari_Hellraiser, and you can check out my writing at ghoulsmagazine.com.
Awesome. Excellent. All right. Well, I appreciate you coming on and kicking off this Sawtober series for me.
Oh, I'm honored. Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. I knew whenever I was doing it, you were the first person I had to grab. So
well, I love that. I'm so glad that people think of me when they think of Saw.
All right. Well, thank you again.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks again to Ariel for joining me. On Friday, Kevin Yerk joins me to talk about Doctor Strange, and on Monday, Christy Adams joins me for Saw 3 and 4. Thanks for listening. Creepy and Geeky is a part of the Morbidly Beautiful podcast network. Please check out morbidlybeautiful.com/podcasts for more great shows. If you like what you've heard, please consider giving the show 5 stars and a review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Also, please share the podcast on social media to help spread the word. Make sure to subscribe on your favorite podcast app or at creepyandgeeky.com. Music for the podcast is Gratitude, composed by Jerry Smith. You can follow the podcast on social media at Creepy and Geeky on both Twitter and Instagram. If you'd like to follow me, I'm Geek Thulu on Twitter and Blue Sky, and geek.thulu on Instagram. You can support the podcast by ordering teas and more on TeePublic or by donating to the coffee page. All of the links are in the show notes. Finally, don't forget, stay creepy.